Hello everyone. Today is my sixth lecture, and I'm going to start talking about the understanding of public policy. What is public policy? And then I will also talk about in my later lectures economic policy, because it is important if we have to discuss about the relationship and the integration of economic, public and social policy. It is essential to have an idea about public policy, and then we'll move on to economic policy. Now, if I say public policy, it is a set of actions, decisions which has been again taken up by the government to address social issues, social problems. It is kind of these public policies are moreover considered as a remedy for to tackle any societal problems, or which it could be a general decision, it could be an authoritative action, it could be also considered as something which is as a document, as a guidelines, where the government takes certain measures, affirmative actions have to be taken by the government in order to address the issues, the problems which are in the or which exist in the society. But but before getting into the understanding of what is public policy, there are two aspects related to this word. That is, first is public and the second is policy. Now, when we say public, it's very important to understand the term public, and we often use the term like public opinion, public interest, public sector. Therefore, public policy has to do, or rather public, the word public itself has to do with the spheres which are labeled as public, and when we say it is generally referred to the public, and when we talk about public, it is public ownership or control for public purposes. So the word public subsumes all dimensions of human activity which requires government intervention or social regulation. Whenever the word public, so it's clearly been stated that the word public denotes, or it often encompasses, it includes in its dimensions the control, the public ownership or control for public purposes. So in a way, it involves some kind of government intervention, it involves social regulation, and it is argued that public administration, which emerged as an instrument for the state for securing that public interests, while the political economist contended that only markets could balance private and public sectors interest. However, the new liberalism is based on the belief that public administration provides a more rational approach or means of promoting public interest. So the word, as I said, that it subsumes all dimensions of public activity or human activity which requires some governmental control, interventions and a regulation. And through the means of public administration, these policies were being administered, these policies were being taken up. So in fact, it gained prominence. When you talk about how public policy came into the flow, it gained prominence as an academic field in the mid 20th century with Harold Laswell's influential work in 1950. So 1920s and 1950s, in fact, two main important authors, Harold Laswell as well as David Easton, they gave a lot of significance to the emergence, to the to emphasize the need for a public policy. In fact, the study of public policy encompasses various disciplines. It has a multidisciplinary approach. It has taken views from political science, from sociology, from economics, and it has evolved significantly over a time. There are certain definitions like Guy B. Peter defines public policy. If you look into the definition, that this is some governmental activities, the activities which has been taken by the government directly or indirectly, which is affecting or influencing the public, the citizen at a larger forum. And they are practically three policy, the three levels of policy choices, policy outputs as well as policy impact. David Easton had defined policy as the outputs of political system, that what would be the outcome of a formal machinery of a formal institutional body, and the public policy as the authoritative allocation of values for the whole society. It says that what are the, because when we talk about public policy, the policy has already been discussed in my previous lectures, that it is a set of actions, a set of principles, guidelines, and public, whenever anything is public, when it comes to the public domain, it becomes imperative that there would be certain rules, certain channels to put a check, put a tab on how these policies are benefiting the larger population, and it talks about some legitimacy or some intervention of the government. So when we say authoritative allocation of values for the whole society, that is, it is applicable for major chunk of the major part of the population, right? And on the actions which has been taken by the government to eradicate problems, to bring about a remedy for those problems in the society. So Henry also defines public policy as a course of action which has been adopted and pursued by the government. Again, if you see, public policies are policies which are being, or rather which are enforced by government legitimacy, or they come into existence through the channels of governance. Anderson also suggests that policy should be considered as a purposive course of action which has been followed by a set of actors in dealing with the current problem or matter, whatever pressing needs and demands or matters are. And Thomas R. Dye had efficiently worked in the area of public policy. He is considered to be one of the pioneers in talking about policies and public policies. He says that whatever government chooses or to do or not to do, so it becomes important that public policies are government's prerogative. It is the government who decides in what manner the policy should be formulated, for whom the policy has to come into existence, who will be the beneficiaries, the target population, right? In fact, Charles Lindblom suggested that the government actors are largely functionaries, and public policies are made via a complex political system, and which cannot be merely understood by looking at which can be understood primarily by looking at the top government officials, or rather those who are at the helm of affairs, who are deliberating on what kind of policies has to be made and in what manner it has to be formulated and implemented as well as evaluated. So public policy he argues, Charles Lindblom argues, it is better seen as a product of broader social forces, particularly the dominant positions of businesses in capitalist democracy, and is restricted by limits in human capabilities. When we look into the historical part of it, it is fair to argue that public policy, as an academic pursuit, emerged during the middle of the last century, and since then it has been acquiring new dimensions and trying to carve a niche, or rather struggling hard to achieve a status in the society. As a study of the process of government, policy forms a significant contribution and component in many a course and an academic program, and in various disciplines such as political science or public administration, economic and business management, sociological aspect, economics, even it has a strong foothold in social work discipline also. So if we look into the formal study of public policy began to take shape in 1920s, with significant developments in 1950s, as mentioned earlier, that Harold Laswell's and David Easton in 1950 called for a distinct policy science, which marked a pivotal moment in the field of development, because at that time the study of public policy, it became important, and it started taking shape, understanding the various functioning of the government, understanding that what can be done and how things would be achieved in the larger picture. In fact, over the decades, the public policy studies have grown in complexities and in interdisciplinary and has an interdisciplinary approach. The study of public policy became important, particularly became important during the post Second World War, and when we talk about the Second World War, it became imperative to understand the societal function. The study of policy became more important during this phase, that is during Second World War, and the second because Second World War, after the aftermaths of Second World War, created a lot of major upheavals in the socio-economic issues, and socio-economic crises were emerged in these countries that participated in wars, but it also created innumerable problems, numerous problems in the countries which has attained independence or were in the process of attaining independence from the colonial rule. So one important part how the policy developed, particularly the public policy during the aftermath of the Second World War. Colonialism had left the societies grappling with various issues. It was being deprivation ridden, poverty, unemployment, income disparities. It was prominent illiteracy. So at the time of, if we talk about the Indian context, at the time of independence, Indian economy was also caught up in a vicious circle of poverty, low income levels, limited size of market, stagnant agricultural arid, underdeveloped industry. Even the economy was extremely low, and it did not had much scope to accommodate other such health, social or other policies. The crisis thrust heavily on the shoulders of the state. So the state's role had become of paramount importance, because the focus of the state was to intervene in economic growth, accelerating economic development, and the problem of the crisis driven economy, which has to be which could be tackled, or which it could be taken up, or it could be resolved through conducive public policies. So the idea was to create public policies because of this so much of upheavals in the socioeconomic structure in any country, particularly if we talk about the in the subcontinent. The focus, the state intervention was important, not only in talking about strengthening economic growth, but at the same time creating parallel conducive public policies. So as we know that the nature of these policies, because if we look into the nature of these policies, it has been changing from country to country, from state to state, and it is because depending upon a state or a country's socioeconomic conditions, cultural background, resources available, utilization of resources, what kind of economy it is, whether it's a developed economy, it is an underdeveloped economy, or it's a developing economy. So the role, depending upon since the policy structure would be changing from country to country, from state to state, depending upon or the system, the process of policy making would also be changing. So as we know that during the colonial rule, the role of the state was confined to maintenance of law and order. It is a well-known fact that during the colonial rule, the state had a very limited scope in exercising its powers or its functionaries, and it was just confined to the maintenance of law and order and collection of revenue in in a few ruled countries. However, but the state was later on, when after the colonialism collapsed and many countries broke the shackles of colonialism. India, particularly if I talk about in the context of our country, India gained independence 1947, and since post-independence, the architects of the constitutions, the planning commission was constituted, and the state had now taken a center stage. They wanted to create viable opportunities. The state took a larger part, was concerned with development policies besides its law and order maintenance. In fact, a larger part of industrialization took place with the help of and participation of state over there. The state had to protect the industry from external competition to one hand, and at the same time internal market on the other hand. So they wanted to bring more of, they wanted to raise the domestic economy in the sense, and they want to raise creating more opportunities in India by establishing or creating a viable flow for internal market and at the same time also protecting from external competition. So then in the course of rapid development, particularly in the wake of industrial revolution, the role of state in public policy was enhanced, and it underwent a drastic change. When we say that state has started taking a prominent position in creating policies in development plan, in development, in bringing about and changing the structure of the changing the socio-economic structure of the society, and looking after the needs and welfare aspects of the people, of the larger population. So the state intervention became very prominent. This state intervention, which focused mainly on the welfare aspect, although the capitalist society as well as the socialist society, there is a merger. If we talk about Indian, what kind of economy we had practiced, we had taken a mixed economy, some aspect of the capitalist society and some of the socialist society. So the role of the state in bringing about public policies, underwent a drastic change. The market at one stage did not welcome much, this market, although they wanted limited intervention of state, but nevertheless the state had taken the center stage, and they wanted to bring about with this notion that the welfare and well-being is of importance, and the market forces became considerably free, which was again indicated by the tide of liberalism and privatization. So the role of welfare state emerged, and it started focusing on the vulnerable sections of the population. They diverted because India too is a welfare state, and it started focusing